A terrified young girl runs into a Nevada biker bar, chased by dangerous men, until a Hell's Angel steps forward and whispers, "Pretend I'm your dad." What happened next shocked everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share. Tell me, where are you watching from? Let's get started. The desert sun was beginning to set over Reno, Nevada, painting the sky in fiery streaks of orange. Along the edge of Highway 395 stood a rugged biker bar called the Rusted Eagle, a place most people avoided unless they belonged there. Rows of Harley-Davidsons lined the front like heavily armored soldiers, their chrome shining even in the fading light. Inside, the atmosphere was loud, smoky, and filled with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and classic rock humming from an old jukebox. The bar was packed with leather jackets, long beards, tattoos, and the unmistakable patch of the Hells Angels Nevada chapter. Among them sat Bear Thompson, a towering biker with a gray beard, thick arms, and eyes that noticed everything. Despite his intimidating look, he was known among his brothers for being calm, loyal, and fiercely protective of the weak. The evening felt normal until the front door slammed open. Everyone turned. A young girl, maybe 13, burst inside, panting, trembling, eyes wide with fear. Her clothes were dusty, her hair messy, and she clutched a small backpack to her chest like her life depended on it. The entire bar fell silent. Bear stood up instantly. "Kid, you lost." The girl shook her head violently. "Please, please, I need help. There are 2 men following me. They were at the bus station. They kept asking me where my parents were, and then they started chasing me." A ripple of tension swept through the room. Bikers exchanged glances. Hell's Angels weren't saints, but they had one rule carved into their bones: you don't hurt kids, ever. Bear knelt down so his giant frame didn't overwhelm her. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" "Emily," she whispered. "What do you want us to do?" Before she could answer, the door rattled again. 2 scruffy-looking men peered through the dusty window, scanning the bar. Their eyes locked onto Emily. The girl gasped and froze. Bear didn't hesitate. He leaned in and whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "You're in danger. Pretend I'm your dad." Emily's breath hitched. "Okay." Bear wrapped one protective arm around her shoulders, not threatening, just firm enough to make the message clear. He straightened his back and stood tall, towering like a grizzly behind his cub. The door creaked open. The men stepped inside. Their faces fell when they saw the crowd of leather-clad bikers staring them down, but one still tried to play it off. "We are looking for that girl," he said, pointing. "She ran off. We just want to talk." Bear moved Emily behind him with one smooth motion. "She's with me," he said, voice deep as thunder. "My daughter." The room went dead still. The men exchanged a panicked look. One muttered, "She ain't yours." That was all it took. The entire bar, an army of Hell's Angels, pushed back their chairs and stood up in unison, their boots stomping on the wooden floor. Bear stared the men down with a coldness that could freeze the desert. "You got 3 seconds, he growled, "to turn around and run." The 2 men froze as every biker in the Rusted Eagle rose to their feet, creating a wall of leather and muscle behind Bear. The sound of chairs scraping back echoed like thunder across the bar. Emily stayed behind Bear's broad frame, her small hands gripping the back of his vest as tightly as she could. Bear didn't blink. 3. He took a step forward, the floorboards creaking under his weight. The men stiffened, one swallowed hard. 2. The bikers spread out behind him, cracking knuckles, crossing arms, forming a silent barrier of steel. By the time Bear growled 1, the 2 men didn't wait for anything else. They spun around and ran out of the bar, tripping over themselves in panic. Outside, they sprinted across the gravel as the bikers stepped onto the porch, watching them flee down the dusty Nevada road. A roar of laughter and satisfied cheers burst from the Angels, but Bear didn't smile. Instead, he turned back toward the trembling girl behind him. Emily, they gons. She slowly peeked around him. When she saw the men disappear into the distance, her knees weakened with relief. Bear caught her before she could fall. You did good, kid, he said softly. You're safe now. Every biker returned inside with Bear and Emily. They cleared a seat for her at the bar, brought her water, and tried to make the atmosphere less frightening. For a girl who just escaped danger, she was handling it with surprising strength, but Bear could see the fear still lingering in her eyes. After a few minutes, Bear asked the question the others were thinking. Where were you headed? You got family nearby. Emily hesitated, twisting her fingers nervously. My mom passed last year. I lived with my aunt after that. Her voice cracked slightly. But she was drinking a lot. She kicked me out yesterday. I took a bus to try and find my older brother in Carson City, but those men followed me at the station. The room fell quiet. The tough bikers, men who'd stared down danger their whole lives, felt their hearts drop. Bear took a deep breath. Emily, you don't have to go anywhere tonight. You stay here, safe. But I don't want to cause trouble, she whispered. Bear smiled for the first time that night, soft, protective, warm. Sweetheart, trouble walked in behind you. You didn't bring it. The Hells Angels nodded and grunted in agreement. Within minutes, the bikers formed a plan. One contacted local authorities he trusted. Another pulled up security camera footage. Others volunteered to ride out and make sure the men didn't double back. Outside, the Nevada night deepened, but inside the bar Emily finally breathed normally again. Hours later, a sheriff arrived, a friend of the Angels. After hearing the story, he assured Emily she would be safe, and arrangements would be made for her to reunite with her brother. But before the sheriff left, he shook Bear's hand. You probably saved her life tonight. Bear just shrugged. Any dad would have done the same. Emily stepped forward and wrapped her arms around Bear tightly. Thank you for being the dad I needed. The entire bar softened. And the next morning, when news broke about a group of Hell's Angels protecting a runaway girl from predators, America saw something they rarely expected. Bikers not as villains, but as heroes. And Emily. She never forgot the night a stranger in a leather vest whispered,